think it's more about you being um, agile enough to then transpose different learnings and cross pollinate stuff, which is very important in consulting, which I would rate like the most important skill in consulting. And then the next would be your networking skills, because consulting is 100% networking business.
Hey Hullas, welcome to the Curious Show. Thank you for coming on, man. Really appreciate it. How you doing?
Hi, Rana. Thank you for having me. I was curious about the Curious Show right from the start. For the couple of episodes I've seen, it really gets pretty interesting as we go through it. So, thanks again for having me.
Thanks for those kind words. That was interesting. See, man, we've known each other for a while, but for everyone listening in, let's just talk about who is Hullas, what is Hullas up to.
Great question. And I can ramble on for hours and hours, but I'll keep it short. So, I'm a management consultant working with PwC, especially in their workforce domain. So, doing basically everything from hire to retire in the HR space. And previously, I worked with consulting firms all across the world with McKinsey, EY, and a short stint within MPL in the line function of what we call as in HR. So, that's pretty much about me. Love movies, love books, love talking on podcasts, and love listening podcasts as well.
That's a good plug. But cool, see, Hullas, you've one of the few whom I know who've worked in consulting, who worked on the people side, and you worked in consulting for pretty much a long time, a large span of your career, right? I think you've gone back 5 6 years, and you're in consulting now in another country. Just walk us through, and I think you're the right person for this. Like, how have you seen the HR or people consulting change over this period of 5 6 7 years that you've been a part of it?
I think it has changed massively. 5 6 years back, when I started in consulting, consultants were more like an outsourced, glorified outsourced agencies where they brought in expertise, but it was more around, okay, fine. Can you provide us certain benchmarks? Can you create certain process flows? Can you create, even at the high level, even with strategy firms, right? Can you create a high level strategy for us and hand it over? Today, fast forward 5 6 years, they are becoming more like thought partners with the skin in the game. Right now, when you have HR consulting or people consulting on board, they are looked at not just people who will come give you certain benchmarks, expertise, and go, but they will co-create with you. They will ensure that whatever's being sort of strategized, created, also goes on the implementation side, and how those sensors work, if they really work um, in the strategy phase. So I think two big things: a, there's a big skin in the game that has come on. B, there is a lot of focus on co-creation rather than this being handed over to a consultant and they are doing it in their silo, kind of a thing.
Got it. Curious about this. Just go deeper on how's the skin in the game for a consultant. It's an engagement, right?
It's an engagement, but 5 6 years back, it should have been a time specific project where you come in, you design a deliverable, you work on a strategic piece, and then you sort of leave or move out. Now you see more and more consulting firms are being challenged. Well, you bring in beautiful, fancy frameworks. Do they really work? If they do, can you prove it that they do? And how that has changed the commercial landscape as well. You were earlier billing clients or working with clients on fixed term engagements. The model has changed where you are working at a lot of times on success fee. Like, fine, you get X percentage for designing, delivering stuff, but when it actually goes to implementation, you actually deliver what you promise or what it should have given you. That is when you get the success fee out of it. And success fee is a part of either the savings that you promised or a part of what you promised on the employee experience side or the tangible benefits from that particular engagement.
So for people consulting, my sense is, and again, correct me if I'm wrong. These are very long-tailed problems with long-tail
Yeah.
solutions, right? So does that work? Like then these are very long-tail engagements you're talking about, right? Because you don't get results very immediately whenever you solve a people problem.
I mean, that is where the shift is now. Does that mean that the traditional pieces of just coming in for a piece, leaving out has eliminated? No. They are still there, but that is not where the meat of people consulting is today. Now we are looking at large scale transformations that run across years. Um, I think and I know we're going to talk a lot more in this particular conversation, but I will just touch upon Gen AI. With technologies like those coming in, there is a leapfrog jump to where we are today and what we would want to be in 4 years, 5 years. And very interestingly, the third theme that has emerged, the buyer or the customer for the people consulting is just not HR or people function anymore. We have seen COs coming in, CFOs coming in, and supporting the people transformation. Of course, it is sort of led and driven by the people function, but we have key stakeholders all across the CXO table coming in and understanding that this is going to be a long scale journey and not something that you can just design in 3 to 6 months, hand it over to them, and go.
But again, this is probably going to take us into a detour. But see, this happened post COVID, right? Post COVID is when probably the CXOs and everybody started coming in wherever you're solving people problems. In your experience, why did that happen? Right? Why did, first of all, am I right in saying post COVID we've been seeing CXOs coming in to people related problems? And if yes, then why did it exactly happen? Why are they coming in? Because erstwhile it was just people team, a people agenda. Rarely did you see a CEO,
Yeah.
right, part of the table when you're bringing on, let's say, an HR consultant.
So two things have really happened. One, of course, what you're saying, there was already a trend that was sort of bringing in more CXOs on the table because technology was still moving ahead, right? And with technology, people realize that they have implications on the way you work. Now with what happened with COVID was there was a sudden accelerated jump towards a new requirement, whether it's ways of working or whether it's even how you are structured with technology, people, process. So post COVID, it just accelerated like um, like a rocket that has just launched. So that's why we saw more stakeholders coming in. They realized that talent and skills is not just a people function thing. It is something that they work and interact on daily basis. Now the role of people function um, became more of an enabler and partner. It was always on the table and people talked about it, but nobody actually believed in it. Now, when COVID happened and when suddenly people function was put on a spotlight on a stage to dance, they came in, they delivered, and that's where people realized, oh, we actually need to focus on the people who work for us, the skills we have in the organization, and the legacy models that we are working with. The second part or the second change that propelled, a lot of early stage companies and startups saw a boom post COVID. And when they saw this boom, they realized their long term growth is by betting on people, because a lot of these startups had to bring in talent for growth. Even that, even if that earlier growth was focused on revenue and not profit, and later it shifted to profit, it was all about talent and people. So first you hire talent, or just bring in as much talent as you can by throwing money to get the top line up. And when you realized, well, actually, you never thought about the implications of bringing in that talent. um, in order to bring profitability, you start cutting that talent down. In both the scenarios, it's people's lives you are impacting.
It's interesting. Yeah, I think you and I have seen that
Yeah.
play out firsthand. But interesting, Hullas, you bring up technology, and I've always been curious about this. How has technology evolved in the people consulting space? Because I was in consulting like 10 years back, not people consulting, but PwC. I think we're both alums. There was very little. Technology was horrendous at best. But I'm very curious that in the last in your journey so far, how have you seen technology evolve in the people consulting space, especially?
I think I will start with a statement which one of my partners told me when we were talking about technology uh, changes over last 4 5 years, and then especially after COVID. They're saying in consulting parlance, technology or people technology was a slide that was always sitting in appendix. Now it comes up top right after executive summary. So it has taken a lot of center stage attention. A, because the rapid movement has given a lot of shift to the businesses to say how can they do things better, faster, and save their bandwidth on anything that can be literally offloaded to technology. So that's the biggest piece that has brought attention from CEOs, CFOs. Like, how can they free up my people to do more of their job, right?
Hmm.
Rather than anything else around it. That it started with that mindset, but then they realized actually you can drive your core work using technology. And that's when we are at a cusp where we see Gen AI coming in and say, literally, you can offload 70% of your work, including some very high level capabilities,
Hmm.
to this kind of technology, and then really keep your teams lean to drive the product that comes from this technology. So
Hmm.
that's why technology is now the real hero. And again, in a very um, joking manner, we used to have transformation teams, people transformation, etc. Now all of them are called people transformation and tech, workforce and tech, change and tech. So you see, tech is everywhere coming in.
Pretty sure you're going to have plus AI. But
Yeah.
let's go there. Let's go to generative AI. Both of us are very keen on this topic. How is it playing out in the people consulting space? Are people using it? Aware of it? Scared of it? Love it?
People are curious about it. I will just borrow that from your show. It's like a new species being discovered, and they don't know what this animal does, where it came from, who is it. They just know that it has some special superpowers that can enable a lot of things, but they really don't know how can we bring it to our house, or how can we sort of bring it uh, to an overall audience, right? Now a lot of that uh, work is happening on understanding a what are the possibilities, b where where could be the use cases for us, especially at people function, right? And three, even if those cases are there, use cases are there, how much of a ethical dilemma will it pose for us? I'll give you a very good example that one of our sort of in one of our client conversations came. It's like, I know Gen AI can help managers draft first draft of a feedback for their employees, uh, eases their life, so they don't have to read thousand things that you wrote in self evaluation form, you wrote in your goal sheet came to me, etc. I club all of that. Gen AI does the analysis for me, throws out a beautiful standardized version for me. But for me as a manager, is it ethical to sort of get that done from Gen AI and then just pass it out? Because a lot of it is about the work that you have done, which I should have known right from the start. You could have written anything in your self evaluation, right? And a machine is processing that. Um, is that something that we can go ahead and do all across the board with different capabilities in managers? Or is it something that you would want to first set guardrails around, put a standardized version template, train your machine to first take out the redundant, take out the biases, human biases that come through, and then sort of bring that into the picture? So a lot of those kind of ethical dilemmas do crop up, even as we are still exploring what are the possibilities. But just to put in some numbers from an overall perspective, a recent McKinsey study said it can generate up to $4 trillion of GDP across. And just to put in perspective, UK's economy in 2021 was 3 trillion. So it can generate up to an entire nation's wealth if you can harness all its benefits. But there are more questions than answers that we have today.
Got it. So you're saying exploratory phase in the sense that it's not being, let's say, prescribed today. That hey,
Yeah,
Gen AI is the solution, because you're right. We don't know, right? We don't. We know some of the small things it does. Like you said, there's an ethical problem. There's also another data problem. We both know someone, ex-colleague of ours, who's solving this problem. What it's recently come up, and I think it's a pertinent problem in our people space, because
yeah,
this we've forgotten that the training is happening on a data set which is public information. So the company, so one problem, I'll just share this, what somebody faced was they fed in all the company data, and what the AI did was it was salary, I think. Somebody put in a query and it gave the whole list of salaries of everybody, because it just didn't know, right, what's the
yeah,
guardrails, because AI doesn't know that, right? There's no sort of hierarchy and there's no guardrail of data. So we know someone who's trying to solve that. But I think once that's solved, the AI co-pilot, I'm very uh, positive and hoping for an AI
yeah,
co-pilot soon. I spoke to someone recently, in fact, based out of UK, who's building an AI co-pilot. Like their idea is just ask, what was the sort of attrition or whatever the last 6 months, who was a high performer, how this person's career has grown, and it'll just give you all these answers. So yeah, interesting times. Cool.
yeah.
I think that's yeah. Sorry, go on.
So I was just adding one more point to that. I think the large amount of use cases what we are seeing today are LLMs based on the transactional or query based data, which it is doing wonderfully well. For example, and what it has also led to is hyper personalization for employee experience. For example, I know for a fact one of the organization that was experimenting, they put it as like next level chatbot. So, for example, if you have to plan your leaves, right, you ask the Gen AI system, how many leaves do I have left? And then how do I plan it so I maximize it? Then it gives you, based on analysis of everybody who's put in the leaves, what should be the best leave plan for you for the year. Like if you're going to plan your long weekends, which ones you should plan, where sort of based on the organizational analysis, there are lean and peak periods for that. And then if you sort of go next level and you ask, sort of, can you help me understand what kind of what kind of scenarios around rail bookings, airline bookings, etc. It sort of gives you highlights there, because it is, if it's an open system, it can pull data for those particular dates and times to say, well, this is a peak period, you'll find flights X% more expensive, that kind of stuff.
Is this a tool? Because you just give an idea of a weekend project for a lot of people.
It is a beta version. That's where they want to like bring it up. When we talk about hyper personalization, it is one of the big tenets that a lot of people operations teams are exploring to bring that power to employees, and it's a completely bespoke experience for you that the AI can cater to.
But let's take this thread forward, Ullas. Let's think of more ideas. What do you think? And in our space, in the people space, what are some of the cool things that you think uh, today, tomorrow, 5 years down the line, somebody is going to build a tool that'll, like an AI based tool. What do you think will come up?
I think some of it will also be linked to the changes in external environment that's coming. Like one of the cases we were also deliberating or discussing um, was around compensation negotiations and the way you see compensation being tackled. Now, with EU pioneering a pay transparency law where you have to declare what the compensation ranges are, and they cannot be like from 1A to 6A, right? They have to be for that grade. Now, with that information more and more publicly available and transparently available, a lot of Gen AI can then sort of suggest you where can you start from, what is the reasonable range you can enter in, and whether you are X percentage up or down that particular offer, and what's your predictive salary, right? So if I have a 50% range between for a grade, based on your skill set, your experience, your sort of simulated performance, where can you actually end up? I think those kind of use cases will emerge. Second, and I think it is pretty much focused on HR consulting. There are a lot of assessment projects that are being done. So, as a function, what is your capability? Like, what is your maturity assessment? What is your payroll assessment, etc. I think a lot of these, with AI capabilities coming in, all the consulting firms will have to think through how can they how can they use this or bring it to the next level, because a lot of organizations can now do it self, right? They can, if they have large enough LLM models, and is a lot of data outside from Glassdoors, so many website, if you can pull that through, then you can yourself say where we are in the maturity assessment to structure a transformation.
So you're saying they'll create the assessments or sort of analyze it
They can
themselves?
analyze themselves. So lot of projects, a lot of studies that start today, they start from phase zero assessments, where because you're working through industries and you're working through different sectors and countries, you bring in the power of where do you stand, and then sort of structure the transformation. But a lot of it can be done by the companies themselves if they have large LLM models, um, also which are sort of open source. Now, that is where also one threat or one guard line is that a lot of organizations today are now choosing to stay out of it. For example, Guardian, which is one of the big media houses, chose to completely safeguard itself from all the open source Gen AI systems, which means they cannot crawl its data or use in LLMs. So a lot of such policies will be required, especially when you think of companies like Glassdoor, because anyone can use their data for the LLM modeling and give you a complete
Mm.
analysis of what ideally should be their product offering.
Got it. What about training and L&D? Don't you see a large use case there? Because one of the things of L&D is like creating a lot of time goes in creating content, right? Content on what you're going to teach, and this is something that today also LLMs do beautifully if you give it a sufficient enough prompt and some contextual prompt. Do you see use case there?
I think massively. When we talk about learning content, learning programs, a lot of it can be channelized through LLMs. However, what needs to stay, or what needs to be sort of explored further, how do you make that engaging? Can you use that AI to make it engaging? I see content creation will definitely be an easy task with AI coming in, but content delivery and ensuring that it embeds where it needs to go is the most difficult task, even what we struggle with today, right? as we um as we learn to interact with technology differently, our understanding of how we consume and how we adapt that has changed massively over the years. So I remember when I first joined corporate, we had like these slides that I had to move through and go on. I don't think any organization today uses that, right? It has to be interactive, or it has to be, there are a lot of simulated ones even now, where you have something like a Black Mirror episode, right? Where you go into it, run through it, choose what you want, and then it creates a scenario based on that, which I think can be very powerful use case for Gen AI.
So that's, I think you've touched upon one of the use cases of recruitment. I think one of the big ones. It's already happening now. These automated interviews that's happening, but it's just recordings, some bit of analysis. I don't remember. I was just talking to someone. I think in my first episode with Charthak, we were discussing. You just take an interview. A machine is taking the interview, analyzing it completely by voice, tonalities, the way your eyes are moving, and you can talk a lie, but you can't really. Your eyes will give it away. So he was thinking of a scenario coming where no one's really taking the first round of interviews. Now, do companies choose to do that or not is different. But when you're doing mass hiring, I think that's a big one. Recorded. Then what you said, assessments, part of
Yeah.
recruitment.
Yeah, and I think one of the cases that we are already seeing some of the companies experimenting is what called as a job audition now. So rather than you coming for an interview, you come for an audition. Like everything, like a stage is set. You think of it as an Indian Idol, right? They will simulate the entire environment. You come into a virtual environment. Think of like a metaverse kind of a setup. You come in. There are certain tasks, certain things that you have to do with an augmented AI kind of setup. You first prove that you can do that in a given time and given scenario, and then it sort of takes your feedback. Where were you? If 100 candidates, I mean, I'm talking about a mass hiring kind of thing. If 100 candidates appeared, where do you rank in terms of the competencies? um, will you be a fit for this particular role purely based on how you perform there? So we are seeing almost some of the companies really keen to experiment on that side. So rather than giving you a coding assignment, let's say, where you just code from XYZ and finish it off, it's a proper audition that you're welcomed into, simultaneously running with 30, 40 odd people. And then AI is analyzing at the same time and giving you where do you stand, where this candidate stands.
Oh, is this actually happening today?
It is, again, without naming any of the clients or any of the organizations. It is one of the model simulations that have come up, um, where
Wow.
some of the tech companies are exploring roles like that, because it's very easy now to uh, sort of rig a coding assignment
Yeah,
or a
yeah.
case study, right?
Yeah, wow. While you were saying this, I was thinking of MIB 1. Will Smith had come for that audition in that white chamber. Just thinking that in a metaverse. Maybe it's a great use case for metaverse though.
Yeah.
But but yeah, I had a case in my company where a guy just we could figure out much later on that he had just taken the answer from one of the from ChatGPT, basically a coding assignment. Uh,
Yeah.
but yeah,
There was a funny video on consulting humor, and maybe something we can share with our audience, where this person is live appearing for an interview with McKinsey, and he's connected that to ChatGPT with a voice. So he's hearing the question, ChatGPT is hearing the question, and then it's structuring the case for him, and this guy is then just narrating that out, feeling all he understands. He has a few questions and so on. So
yeah.
yeah, all those scenarios will come up as well.
But yeah, again, there's going to be guardrails around its own.
Exactly.
A
And
lot.
that's where I think people function has a big role to play. Like, who will be the custodian of all this? You will see, implications. You will see all models revamped across finance, marketing, all all that you can think of in an organization, right? But who's going to keep a check in terms of governance, and who's going to bring it to audits? um, and it has to be a people function, because AI needs to always be in complementary terms with the human skills and the way you approach the organizational setup, which I think is a big role that we have coming for people function. And we still don't know where it will sit, but it needs to come.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I think in a very small scale, you're already seeing that now with internal communication, because a lot of people are now using ChatGPT for their internal mails,
Yeah.
and you're seeing that homogenization of language. Like all mails are now starting to sound very similar, right? You can just make out now. I can pretty much see some company making a policy that you can't use ChatGPT for sending out communication, because it's great, a level playing field, but then it just sounds boring after a point. Anyway, Hullas, you and I can go on this topic.
Yeah.
I
It can
I'll
take
just take
days and
a
years.
maybe another whole episode just on this. But let's segue to something and I want to just give value to people who are listening in. See, you're one of those few who've worked in, like I said, on consulting and the line, like people side. So what are those skill sets that you think is needed, right, to survive and thrive on both sides? Is anything that's complementary, or it's completely different set of skill sets? The consulting side, the line people side.
I think definitely there are these are complementary skill sets. I would say if you borrow from both the sides, you will see you become a better professional. Either way, you build your career into. For example, starting with consulting, right? The influencing skills, stakeholder management skills, as well as the program management skills, right? I think those remain pretty high throughout consulting. Yes, you need to have tech know-how and you need to be focused on the domain knowledge and domain understanding of how that works. But I think it's more about you being um, agile enough to then transpose different learnings and cross pollinate stuff, which is very important in consulting, which I would rate like the most important skill in consulting. And then the next would be your networking skills, because consulting is 100% networking business. Um, and it's not just for building client relationships or getting clients on board. Internally in the firm as well, uh, you need people who are your sponsors, who are your mentors, who ensure that you get the right opportunities to grow and learn. On the flip side, when you come to a line role, right, these things are also important, but what is also important is a very domain specific knowledge and deep expertise that you bring in the role which you are. For example, if you're a people partner, you need to be great at understanding business first of all, and then sort of bringing in the talent lens to it so that you can be trusted as a person, right? If you don't know your business side or your people side, you're not going to be trusted. So all the other skills, yes, they are important. You might not need that level of networking when you are in a line kind of role, but if you know that, you stand out, right? You can quickly build those relationships across the network in the firm, and you will probably thrive more. Similarly, if I borrow the deep expertise that you get from line and keep it in consulting, you will really be known as a subject matter expertise as opposed to someone who's just connect to the right person professional. That's a very common term in consulting, connect to the right person, because that's what you literally do. You know where the expertise is, you plug in that expertise. But if you bring in real expertise yourself, there are much more opportunities for you. And again, mentorship, um, something that is actively encouraged and you find via networking in consulting. But in line, it takes a bit of backseat because you're sort of in a function, you have your seniors, juniors, etc., that you sort of look out for, and then you find mentors there. But I would say if you have that consulting mindset of networking and finding mentors across, I think you will just go beyond people function. There's a lot to learn from people across different functions. Like, for example, I learned from people in tech, right? Someone like you, when I was in MPL, you were bringing those capabilities. You're a great, deep expert on that, which I did not know, but always great to be a mentor. And similarly, on the revenue side, business side, you can just find those people and really anchor yourself to them. So I would say one, I mean, from my learnings and my personal opinion, bring both the skill sets together and see wherever, whichever path you go, how can you bring the best of it, and do learn from the other side as well. Don't think that that path is forgotten and you've taken the one which is completely different.
Got it. A natural double click to this, Ullas. Let's say a young guy or girl, fresh out of MBA or fresh out of college. Um, how does a person break into HR or people consulting?
I think that's a question which is sort of valid for a lot of our listeners, and a lot of young people like that reach out to me on daily basis. I think at the minimum, it has to have three parts to it, which you need to really focus. Um, One is keep your basic toolkit ready. Like, think of an engineer's mindset. You should know your f- basic maths, Excel, problem solving things, all the tools that enable you to do that. And now going forward, definitely Gen AI and how do you do prompts. That is going to be a basic given you're going to be in consulting, because gone are the days that they will expect you to have half a day or one day to generate first draft. of a deliverable. They will expect you will hit Gen AI, whatever internal models they are building and they have, and you'll probably do the first draft in 1 hour, and then you will use your expertise in the next hour to do that. So keep your toolbox and toolkit always ready. Ensure that basic hygiene factor is there. Second, build your domain knowledge. I mean, in consulting especially, you can wing it sometimes, you can't wing it always. You need to have that deep domain expertise. At least start building it. I wouldn't say you will have it on day one walking out of the college. Let's be honest, whatever colleges teach us is more around giving us a peer group and a good alumni. um, but you really need to build on the domain knowledge and the trends that are happening so that you're in line with. And I think the third thing which I always encourage is networking. um, it's a difficult thing. A lot of us are different personality types. I will not go into introvert extrovert because that's an outdated model, I think. But what all of us are different personality types. Ensure that you stay connected to people who are in the field. So all of my jobs, Ranak, all of my jobs in people consulting, I've just got through referrals because I knew people who were already in consulting, whom I interacted with, talked about where my ambition lies, and they connected me to the right opportunity. So third one is probably the most important because all the other two you can build alongside. Third one takes the longest time to build, takes a lot of effort to invest into it, and you will not know, you will certainly find the right opportunity.
But Hullas, first of all, you are the most networked person I know. But let's get a little deeper on that. And I've always been curious about that. Is there any hacks that you use to network? Maybe it's like that's what you're naturally good at, but just generally to somebody who has no idea about how to start networking, what's the
I
right way to go about it?
I think I will just talk about how you can deliberately do some workouts. It's like working out. I'm naturally not a person who will go out and network, and I learned even more so when I came to UK because literally the business runs on networking, right? You can be Dave Ulrich, but if the client knows partner at XYZ better, he's going to use Ulrich's model, but he's going to work with the partner he knows, right? So
Okay.
I think it takes workout. It takes you to do reps, and then you get better at it. I think I would advise start with your comfort zone. If you've graduated from a college, find the alums who are there. Easier to reach out. Um, you're not too worried about whether they will not reply or you will come across as a bit desperate or something. Totally okay. So I think that's where I started to reach out to um, my friends peers who were there in consulting just to understand what this is all about. um, it can be totally a different world from what we otherwise work. Second, then you sort of make introductions. Even LinkedIn works, right? You don't need to be personally going to a networking event, or you need not be going um, and visiting consulting offices. But a lot of, for example, campus programs, especially in India, now focus on doing a pre-networking event, coming to the campus or virtually, or calling you to their office. Do that. Go to it, even if you don't want the job. I know so many people who are not interested in consulting. Absolutely fine. Just go there, listen, still talk to people, have that network going. You don't know when it'll come, and it'll sort of come back to you. Second myth that a lot of people have, that consultants are busy people, they might not talk to me or they might not revert me. That's a total myth. They are sitting in a business which they know totally runs on networking, right? For them, internal people or external people, because they know tomorrow you can be a great asset to what they are doing. They can monetary get benefits from referring you getting to the firm. Third, they know they can have someone in their network whom they will probably use at some time, calling at the connecting the right people thing. So that's a myth that you have to first totally take out of your mind, that they they are busy, they're never going to reply to. And I think third, which is the most difficult part, you have to be the first person to say hello. It takes a lot of effort. You have to do sometimes rehearsals in the mirror with yourself, but you're overthinking when you think you will say some things and they will totally judge you that you don't know how to talk. It's not that way. We work, or people work, we've worked with people across different nationalities, different languages. um, I think that that thing just goes out of the window when you're in consulting, because you're literally working. I hear 10 to 15 accents in a day. I've stopped even caring about that anymore. So third thing is very important. You have to force yourself to go and say hello, make that first step. I struggle with it personally. I can't do it in most of the days or the way people do it in this country, to be honest. But big learning curve for me. So that is probably the most important and difficult thing. You go and say hello.
Interesting. Or fourth tip: start a podcast to talk to people.
Absolutely. I think going going forward, that'll be fantastic.
Honestly, man, like that was one of my levers for starting this. Just an excuse to talk to interesting people. But when coming back to what we are talking, so we spoke of someone who wants to get into consulting. But again, I'm always been curious of this. Is it easy to make the jump from line to consulting back to line function in let's say today's world, especially from an Indian context, if you know.
I think there are again two factors to it. It is not difficult. Can it be easy? Yes, it can be, depending upon how you approach it. Again, first things first, you have to first understand how this world operates. Either way, right? I've had a very small stint in line, but you have to work that you have to think that the world works differently on both sides. On one side, you are a resource that is focused to deliver something. So you are strategically important to a consulting firm. They earn from you. You are a revenue generator for them. On the other hand, you are a deep expert to an organization who doesn't know what they have to do with their talent. You're not a revenue generator, but you're a person they will count on. If it's a good organization and believes in people philosophy, they count on you for the right advice to ensure that they build their talent, which builds their revenue, right? They know you are the liver which will drive them up the roller coaster. So you have to understand the model and the skills required for both. So when I say the model, understand in consulting, because you are a resource, you're going to generate revenue for them. What will matter the most? How you link to the opportunities, how you help deliver things on time, ensuring the costs are in check, right? If somebody is going to pay £2,000 for you a day, for example, they will expect certain kind of a value add and a certain time period where it should be delivered on, and they're busy. That's why they've given the that's why they're co-creating with you, because they cannot invest entire expertise and energy into it. So you build those capabilities. How can you build those capabilities? You will not know everything. I don't know everything, Rana. You, I think, will not know everything, but I could be
Okay.
wrong. You're running podcasts, you're bringing all the knowledge in.
I'm a
but
solution exchange.
but you should know where can you arrange that expertise from. That's your big plus in consulting. And that's why the networking becomes so important, because you have to understand that expertise sits somewhere in these 100,000 people who sit across the globe in different countries. Can you get it at the right time, at the right cost, to the right people? If you can, you'll be successful. In line, that becomes not so important, because they know you are the expert. I'm not going to pay for you to bring in some expert from XYZ. I mean, you can if you have budget, but I will count on you to do a research led, um, adaptable model or advice for me to do it. It might not be the best in class, but it should be workable for me. So there, your expertise becomes a little more heightened, right? And as you grow, it becomes across domains what you have done, and how can you bring it all together. So you might be a people function professional, but have you done, or do you have a bit of expertise and actual doing experience in TA, different domains of HR.
Mm.
In consulting, you can still be a generalist and then focus heavily on people consulting as well, because consulting skills or your resource model becomes really, really strong. So once you get that right, then you can prepare to get into either side. So if you're going from line, even if you see the the assessment process, right, which will focus on your approach. If there's a problem about the client, they will not test you on, for example, very deep into how will you build competencies. They will focus on how will you build the model framework for it to
Mm.
run, where will you get the right expertise from. So they want to know how will you do the approach, how will you bring in the right things. That's what your role would be largely. And as you grow in consulting, again, very different paths. As you grow in consulting, revenue generation, which means your the way you market, the way you sell, this expertise becomes critical than the expertise itself. Expertise you can get. Can you market it to the client so that it works for them? They're happy with it. They ask you to come again. In line, when you grow, we look at you as a even deeper expert, the one who can run things, the one who can be an ally to the CXO, and they can totally count on you to drive that show. But at the same time, you need to sell your ideas as well, right? So it is still important there, but it is not where you can your expertise can be secondary, in terms that you can't just arrange it from anywhere. You are still the one who's having that expertise, but you are more of a idea generator plus a deep expert. So those paths are very different on how you grow. But irrespective of the level which you come, once you understand these nuances, then the capabilities align to it, and then mapping that capabilities to, okay, what the assessments would be. I think you can easily make it on the either side.
Yeah, I think people should do both, I suppose. It's two different worlds, but it's complementary. Like it's like a there's a lot of subset in those sets. uh, you should for sure. I mean, you've done it, I've done it to a certain extent.
Yeah. and
It's
and I think I will just allude to your talk the other day around exploring your career, right? So that's where the phase in your first 10 years which you talk about is where I would really want you to actually try and do both. You will see for yourself where are you aligned to, what you enjoy doing. Let's be honest, you have to work 30, 40 years of your life. If you don't like it, you are in a totally wrong line either way, on a totally wrong path. So use those 10 years, and then I think you can have more answers for yourself.
Yeah, and have the courage when you figure out, uh, because that's what people forget, that this is 30, 40 years you're going to be working, probably more. Yeah, it's 40 plus, I think, because we don't really stop working at 65, do we?
Yeah.
We'll still continue. I mean, you can't continue if you don't love it.
Yeah. And with cost of living, I think very soon we'll be working till 75 or something.
Yeah, I mean, look at Warren, look at Charlie.
Yeah.
But he was doing what he loved doing till literally his last day. That's crazy. But yeah, coming back, I think that's we touched on a lot of things. We haven't spoken about analytics. We haven't spoken about people analytics yet. I'm very curious. How is analytics perceived in the consulting world? Is it important? Again, loved, hated, important. How is it?
It is, I think, slowly there's an affinity that is being developed towards it, I would say, because people are now realizing the power it brings, especially when you do decision making. Again, it was something that was sort of seen as ancillary capability, that fine, if I have it, I have some of the things which are more backed up, some of the things which have more interlinkages. But today that is changing rapidly. um, I'm not sure if some of us are aware about Microsoft Viva, right? When Teams launched, there was nothing like that. Now you have a product which Microsoft is endorsing, giving for free to a lot of organizations to say, you test this out. Viva, what it does is it brings together all your people data plus the way you work data and give you very robust insights to make decisions. And integrated with Gen AI, you have like a mini people consultant in house, which can give you very high level recommendations as well. So slowly, I think it is something that people need to taste first, then they believe in it, right? Otherwise, most people think it's big talk. Analytics is fantastic. Do I need this capability? No, I've been working for 10 years in this organization. But when they see the power of it, like when one of the clients saw what org network analysis, for example, can do and tell you these are your five A people, like your A team would be these five people if you're going to change your entire business model or you're going to change the way people access technology, right? A new technology. And they were just mind blown, right? If these people drive so much of interactions, so much of nods, basically influencing people who are leaving, influencing people who are staying, then why haven't we invested in them so far? Just because they are not on your traditional hierarchical map at influential positions doesn't mean that they don't hold influence. Um, so those kind of insights, they're still coming up. It is it is not like technology which has suddenly gone out and everybody wants to have a cutting edge tech system focused on employee experience, etc. It is slowly being built. We still see a lot of uh, big heavy organizations anchoring on very basic analytics. Like, in fact, to a certain extent they will do just reporting and call it analytics. But as and when they are getting the flavor of this, and I think a lot of tech companies are now understanding that how much it can bring in, they are trying to offer, get more clients to taste it and then see the power of it.
To give an example, you spoke of ONA, and I think we'll just get into a little deeper on ONA after this. But any other examples purely anchored on numbers or use cases that you've seen?
um Again, I can't go deep because a lot of it is highly confidential, but some of the use cases, for example, we have seen, especially in lot of flight risks, right? There are leading indicators that ONA has identified, which says, okay, if tomorrow X percentage of people is always at risk, so then how are you managing that risk? Especially in times when layoffs are happening or there are external changes. So, org network analysis gives you a lot of focus on the way people are interacting. There are certain sensors that go up. I will give you a very fictional example without quoting anything. For example, there are a lot of organizations that do points on recognition, and a lot of these points are sort of redeemed or can be redeemed, right?
Hmm.
You will see that, or at least we saw that they become a primary sensor to see flight risk post a performance cycle, for example. A lot of these points start getting encached, and they start getting encached from nodes of different departments and people, right? And you will see, if you analyze who are the people who left, what are the points they encached, and then who left next, you will see a pattern. And that will bring a lot of insight into, are you or are you not losing your key talent? So in words of the organization, your golden points tell you who your golden people are and when they're going, which is quite interesting.
Uh, I'll just add something on a lighter note. The same can be said about when someone is accessing their ESOP data.
Yeah.
Uh, it's funny, but it's shockingly little true. I don't know if someone's done a study on it, but the more people start accessing their ESOP data frequently and asking you questions about it, yeah, that guy's leaving, man.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Absolutely, you touched the right spot there.
Yeah, this is not sure if I should say all of this out loud, but anyway, it's out there. But I just come back to ONA, right? ONA is hot. Everyone talks of ONA, but I think you're the best person to actually define what is ONA. It's org network analysis, but what is it? What does it do?
I think, in very simple terms, and not to confuse anybody who's listening in, it basically tells you, bringing all the data that an organization houses, brings the power of it to say which are your hotspots in the organization. Now, you need to put the context to it when I talk about the hotspots. Which are the hotspots which drive a lot of influence in terms of changing capabilities? Which are the hotspots or areas which drive some things like attrition, right? When you see these hotspots going up and down as indicators, there is some predictive ability over there. So, in very simple terms, it helps you bring together all the data, see the hotspot, but in a particular context. It is not sort of a, it is not, it is not magic, right? Which will just give you everything you need, but you need to um, use it like a proper operating system. You need to understand where you need to focus in, where you need to pull the levers, what things do you want to look at, what patterns do you want to analyze, and then it'll throw you some beautiful um, pictures. If you can read through those, that's where ONA will come into picture. But it can touch almost everything in NHR value chain if you are zooming in on the right thing using that data.
God, and how's it working at the back end?
I think you will probably be a more of an expert there than me, but from a backend perspective, it sort of um, establishes interlinkages between data. So when you see clusters or centers, you see what is forming those clusters, and do I have another layer of data that interprets what can be added, what can be modified on that cluster to see if anything changes or not. So again, feel free to add here as well. You have done a lot of understanding, and you've done a lot of research around this as well.
Yeah, I sort of hacked it, hacked it through emails,
Mm,
hacked it through Slack conversations, basically trying to understand how people
yeah.
interact, talk to each other in whatever is the native way in the organization. I've always struggled with. I think I did a small scale, but at a very large scale, I've had this very fundamental question that ethically, is it right to do? Is the person on the other end does not know that they are being tracked.
And I
Is it
think
the
some
right
of
thing to
it
do?
is where products like Viva come in, right? So when you sign up for Teams, it gives you a big long disclosure, and then you have to accept it, which most people do, because it says it's not reading the content, it's just analyzing frequency numbers, linking it to different paths. um, for example, the number of leaves you take versus the number of emails you do, plus the number of ESOPs you have. It can give you some very weird combinations, but it pulls all the levers, and then it suggests a lot of things at the back end, but a lot of things at the front end. So to the end user also, it's quite beneficial. For example, they will throw this kind of an insight saying you spent XYZ percentage meeting in time in the meetings. Um, were you able? It was on X percentile compared to the rest of the org. Were you able to deliver on XYZ this week? So it'll almost be asking you tough questions using your data, everybody else's data, to say, are you really making best use of your time in these meetings? Or is it something you can cut back, scale back, and focus on more productivity? But to your point, absolutely. I think it's still an ethical question. Um, whether who is this flowing to? Are they able to see what you talk and what you share? Will you feel comfortable working in an organization that knows every day what you read, what you share, and whom you talk to? Pretty personal choice, I would say.
Yeah, and that's where I keep thinking about. We talk of AI, we talk of AI in a very positive way. It's of course positive, but a day will come where all of what you're, let's say, talking, your emails, your chats, maybe even conversations. Because I've heard of cases where what you're talking in the room, of course, you have Googles and Alexas listening to it, but companies also listen to it, and all of them are going to be put through AI, right?
Yeah.
Very interesting things will happen when, if everybody knows this is happening, then everybody will put forward their best behavior. Right now, if everyone is doing that constantly, then you're not being true, right? You're not psychologically safe. You're not, the individualism goes away because you know that I'm
Yeah.
constantly being big bossed, big brother, or whatever you call it. I don't know. It's a sort of like a thought
It's a
exercise.
honestness, to be honest. Yeah. And that's
Yeah,
where even the culture, the values become
correct.
even more important going forward, right? You would also see talent moving to companies or organizations which are driving these culture based tenets and values, because then even if all these technologies are in place, there is still psychological safety,
Mm.
as opposed to other areas where the compensation, the benefits could be high, but you are always on the edge, right? You don't know
Yeah.
when and what you will say will be used against you.
Yeah, I think we'll default to being, very, yeah, it's okay, because that's what we've said to Google, right? We said, yeah, it's okay. My switching on my fan, sitting in my couch is more important to me than my privacy.
Yeah, I mean, but you still have the legislations guarding it. Like, I know India is soon coming onto that path, but
Mm,
in Europe, they do
mm,
have your data, but God forbid if it goes out, they are in
mm,
more trouble than anywhere else in the world, right? So,
mm,
I mean, to an extent, it becomes an inconvenience to you, right? Like, for example, the other day, I was trying to talk to customer care, and I did not remember my broadband's landline number. Like, I don't use it, right?
mhm,
Uh, and they did not let me connect to a customer care executive unless I tell them the landline number. I was like, this is horrible, right? You have all my details, my name, etc. Then the like I'm accessing your bot from IP address, right? You can use that. But no, they were adamant about it and decided it's the data privacy of the highest level. So I think those kind of things will come in. Um, will create some inconvenience, but I think you definitely need regulations around it.
yeah, that's the Indian in you who got pissed off.
Yeah. And not to be racist here, but even the person on the other side was Indian, so I was trying to influence her, like, how it works, right? Come on. So like, no, I can't connect you to a customer care agent for the live talk unless you give me your broadband ID.
Cool. Switching gears, Hullas, I want to touch on performance with you because you're an expert at it. Let's start again on the same thread since you're talking about AI, and we've already covered one point, that you spoke of performance reviews being generated by AI, right? And I have a feeling that once all this funding winter and everything just dries up, hopefully next year, there's going to be a lot of money in and a lot of funding that comes in HR tech. The last where we left off was OKRs were taking off, like OKR tools, performance tools were like the rage, and I think that'll continue with AI. But just brainstorming between us, what do you see, like, where what do you think is going to get solved, or what features are going to be brought in where AI and OKRs and performance intersect? Is it even possible to any
I
extent?
think that's a question lot of our experts even are deliberating upon, because what has really happened is that AI has taken up HR operations by a storm. Everybody who's talking about shared
Yeah.
services, GBS, is sort of now um, inclinating towards getting AI in. A lot of your service agents are probably not required anymore going
Hmm.
forward, and that kind of thing. But when you actually come to deep expert functions or COEs, you see people have not thought through. They don't know where, for example, in the performance journey, if I start right from goal setting, right, or thinking about OKRs, or thinking about how do I get the org goals to get cascaded, etc. There is a lot of dearth of thinking on where these use cases can come in. In fact, our clients also, they are sort of, again, I'm just speaking from a general perspective, but a lot of organizations are just more inclined towards getting the operations bit sorted first, and they'll probably then go into this space. But there are definite big use cases that I personally think could be there. One of them is definitely on how you build managerial capability in this whole process.
Okay.
So while the goal setting, etc., can give you first drafts and all those things can happen, what can really happen is that every manager, since they are sort of so occupied with their day-to-day responsibilities, they can almost have like a mini assistant that structures these steps for them. A lot of it, I think, is coming even in HR tech systems. So I think tomorrow you will see Workday, Success Factors, potentially Darwinbox, etc., having these agents coming in that run you through the performance module journey, right? So they will tell you what good looks like, what bad looks like. In fact, some of them, for example, when you, let's say, punch in the goals, right, they will give you a score, like based on what they've analyzed within the organization and outside. The way you have drafted your goals, is it up to a certain standard, yes or no? It's like how you get a password prompt, right? Whether your password is weak, strong, great kind of thing. That's one. The second, lot of tracking can be done automatically, right? So rather than you going into a review, presenting what you've done, etc., on that particular goal, you need to probably just update a few things, and then um, lot of Gen AI can drive it in terms of speaking for X many OKRs are on track. This is where we see issues cropping up, and you can directly jump onto those topics and prioritization in board meetings. So I think it is still at a stage where we are exploring what um, supportive or administrative tasks it can really take up in the process. On the strategic side, we are still not there. I think it needs a higher level of thinking to really go deep into it. But have you seen any in your case, or any interesting things you have come across?
No, man. Again, what you said exactly echo what you said. Everyone's thinking of how to automate ops because I
Yeah,
think low hanging fruit, right? It's just costs which can be eliminated to a large extent. Recruitment is one thing where AI is the wrong word for it. Just language models and
yeah,
machine learning was there because those keyword predictors and all those things were
yeah,
already
yeah,
there. What's happening is definitely JDs being automatically created,
yeah. Mhm.
roles, some even career paths being created. That's people I've heard are taking stabs at it. But you're right, on a strategic point, no one's thinking about it from performance.
Yeah,
I was discussing with one of the OKR companies that I worked with, that just summarize, right? Like you're doing check-ins 12 times a month in the performance appraisal, just summarize, bring out what's good, bad. Sorry, just summarize, what you've done throughout the year. But that's not the feedback. That's just a summary that will help you draft a feedback.
yeah,
I think
yeah,
another one is a problem that I've seen, people don't know what or how to rate, especially this with first time managers as well as first time employees.
yeah,
Right? I think AI should play a part there, where just telling them that, hey, what does a 4 on 5 mean? What does a 3 on 5 mean? It's very easy for an AI to be able to just guide you. But like you said, there's some content and it just tells you, hey, are you sure
yeah,
you're a 5 on 5?
yeah,
This is what you've written. Doesn't seem like that. But yeah, honestly, nothing that I've seen. Let's hope someone is doing something about it. The
yeah.
only thing I'm excited about is AI Copilot. Let's see how that pans out.
Absolutely. Do you want to share a little bit more about the AI Copilot? I think everybody would love to know a little more.
Yeah, so I'll not obviously name those guys because they haven't
Mm,
even named their company yet. But my vision of Copilot is, let's say another brain, right? Let's say my second brain, which is just like a brain on steroids. It has all the company information uh, of past, whatever's happened, let's say all the years back, whatever's happening today. And it can also be, with analytics, with correlation regression, also be able to predict the future. So it just, all the data is there, it has all the intelligence in the world, and it's up to me to be one, able to query those, query it and ask those, ask and get intelligent answers. At the same time, also the machine being able to tell me, right? So simple things like, let's say I want to hire, right? I want to make my
Mhm.
hiring plan for, let's say, next quarter. Today what I have to do, by the way, all of this can be done today, right? I go and check what was the attrition rate last year, what was the
Yeah.
attrition rate before, I try to predict an attrition, then I look at the cost, right? I look at the revenue, I back calculate, and I do this, like, literally I've been doing this. I look at the revenue, I look at,
Mhm.
from back calculating how many people do I need. Very easy to do this at a sales function. And then, like, after a lot of hours, come at a number which is wildly wrong most of the times. But a machine will, just the blink of an eye, will be able to do all of this pretty damn accurately than what I've been doing.
Wow. Almost sounds like a sci-fi show or a sci-fi movie. Um, which reminds me of a good show called The Good Place. If you've seen that show,
Yeah.
there's a character like Janet in there, which exactly does what you're saying. Um, Harnesses all the information in like fraction of a second and gives you all the recommendations. And she works in this like after afterlife scenario. So great show for
Mhm.
anybody who wants to see. Really fun, especially season 1 and season 4.
Yes, I think I saw first couple of episodes, but the problem with this is it's a data privacy nightmare,
Yeah.
especially if you're doing copilots for everybody. You've got to be very compliant with data on this. Okay, second part to performance. Let's come back to 2023, 2024. And this is a question that a lot of people have asked, and I think you're the right person to answer this. Is, I am, let's say, the HR manager at a very young startup. I've got about 50 people in my startup. We're growing fast. I want to do performance appraisals. Would you have a very detailed tactical blueprint of everything I should do, from OKRs to, first time in my history I want to do performance? How do I go about doing this?
I think first of all, the foremost thing you should do is um, define what what performance means to you and what does it align to. So, for example, what is your organizational goal right now? Is it, in very simple terms, to make revenue at this stage, or it is um, to bootstrap, or it is to focus on cost optimization? Now, that will drive the behaviors that you would want to see in your workforce. For example, if you want to really go aggressive on revenue, what drives the revenue? Is it, let's say, a small tech company? Is it the number of logins and the features, etc., that people use? If yes, then what drives those? Shipping, development, and shipment of those features. Then do you want to sort of focus on that as a part of your performance? First, link that, then see what your philosophy is, right? If your philosophy is, I already have the talent required, I just need to pump them up, take them to the next level, or I don't have the talent required, so are you just going to bring in more people and then put them through that process? So that entire value chain needs to come in. But at the performance side, see what levers would you want to pull. Are you going to be aggressive on feature development and shipping? Then everything else um, can be sort of a second level kind of thing. So you are more focused on performance from that perspective, as opposed to you are a bit stable in your business. You want people to continue doing the good work, but do it in a more efficient manner. So you would want to then invest time and effort in um, innovation or process excellence, that kind of areas. Now that has a very different levers of performance because that will not be an immediate quarter by quarter. So you have to link your OKRs accordingly and see what drives performance. One thing is for sure, your performance cycles and levers will change every time your organization moves a curve. Start with that, then build out what are the areas you would want to assess or enable performance on. It could be your revenue metrics, your uh, role by role different metrics that you have, but how do you want to prioritize those? Which ones do you want to give more priority, and which ones do you want to give less priority? And then, very important part that a lot of organizations at that stage forget is, how are you achieving those, and how important is that for you, the how part. Now, of course, there could be some cycles where how part is not that important, and then there are times when how part is that important. So I'm talking about here behaviors, values, and the softer aspects. um, at any point, they should not be taken out. They should definitely have a very meaningful role in your performance process.
Hmm.
And depending upon this balance that you get between hard factors and soft factors, driven by your overall goal, then you think about the process and the technology that enables it. So, do you really need a fancy HRMS to do that? Or do you think a lot of Google Suite applications, for example, can work for you? And last thing, not a vanilla process might not work for everyone. So, do you want to create personas? Because you are a small organization, you know there are certain engineering folks, there are certain supporting teams. They might not be segregated well, like finance function, people function, IT function. But can you make those personas and then see what tweaks will enable best performance delivery from that particular set? So maybe on the engineering side, there could be some levers. Um, let's say on the developmental side, customer ticket side, those could be really important. While enablement functions, long term or a bit of project based performance is more important, because whatever they will be delivering will have a slightly longer horizon to impact your performance. So that needs to be taken into account. And then how are you bringing the how factor in behaviors all across, and
Hmm.
how much of leadership support you have to all this? Because you can make a very fancy process framework, but if there is no belief with the leadership, founders, or whomsoever you're working with, then any process is a bad process, or any framework is a bad framework.
And how does OKRs fit into this then?
I think OKRs come right at the top, right? When you know what your goals are at an organizational level. Let's say you want to become a leading tech company in XYZ, right? Or you want to become market player um, in that particular category. Uh, that will determine how you structure your OKRs from there. And OKRs will then sort of flow in every function, even people function. So your OKR at the start when you're trying to grow could be hiring, for example. So in terms of bringing in talent, that for the quarter for you could be, you need to grow your workforce by X%, and then that sort of flows all across. As opposed to, you think you are rightly sized, you don't need talent that crazy, you would rather want to build manager capability. Now, is that something you can structure as an OKR? Think about it and then build that. So every quarter, OKRs become your priority engines. So they give you what the P zeros are, and then you develop individual goals linked to those OKRs for that particular time period.
Got it. But another thing that's always stumped me, right? OKRs is objective and key results.
Yeah,
I've seen a lot of people use them interchangeably, but what's the right way? Like, what's subjective? And my sense is KRs are linked to the objectives. What is an objective? What is a KR?
I think this is a question a lot of people get, like you rightly said, stumped with. A very good cricketing analogy is can be used here. So, for example, for you, objective would be to, from an overall perspective, to win the match, right? Key results would be you scoring X percentage of runs and believing X number of runs and believing it gives you a win probability of 80%. So for me, key result is that if I score 350 plus, my win probability is 90%. That will help me achieve my objective.
Hmm.
Similarly, it could be milestone based objective as well. So, for example, in a 20 over match, if you're chasing, for you, objective is that the DL target at the end of 10 overs would be, I don't know, 100 runs on a 180 run chase. What will sort of give you the key results? If you score at 5.xxx% or 7.87% run rate every over, you're going to reach that objective, right? So those the run rate becomes your key result. Key result is your driver or messenger to make you reach the objective.
Where does initiatives come in? Because to get to let's say that 5 point whatever run rate, bunch of people have to do something to get there. So
Yeah, so
how
your
do you,
your batters have to ensure that they run across the ground when they're not hitting boundaries, or if the run rate is 9.5 and over, they know they have to hit a boundary every over, because your singles and doubles will not take you to 9.5 and over. So that will drive initiatives, and then it then needs to be planned. Okay, if you're going to hit a boundary every over, how you're going to pick and choose that ball that you're going to take your shot on, and who's going to be the playing the role of a aggressive batter, and who's going to be more like an anchor sheet, because you need to also preserve your wickets. So that's where the risks and um, the areas that you need to keep in mind from a mitigation perspective. You have 10 wickets in hand. Not everybody in your team can bat, so that will come really handy when you think about, okay, objective, what will be the my key result, and what I need to plan in terms of initiatives to get those key results going so that I
right.
get the objective.
So initiatives, you have key results that's leading to the objective. That's
Yeah.
a great example. Cool, Hulas. Before we wrap up, any closing thoughts? And also, you want to tell people where they can find you, where they can follow you.
Absolutely. I think love the whole podcast thing. It brings a lot of community insight together. So maybe we don't have a Janet yet, or maybe we don't have your sci-fi bot yet, Ranak, but all this that's coming through um, is a great repository of knowledge, which at some point when AIs will and robots will be common, will just go through these podcasts and give me everything that I need to hear. Probably I'm really looking forward to that time. And anyone can reach out to me via LinkedIn. My handle is there. My parents also named me weirdly, so it's easy to find. You will not find a lot of Hullas. Uh,
Goes for the both of us.
yeah, I know you have a funny story about your name. You should definitely share it, at least in one of the podcasts.
Yeah, yeah. It's a good content idea. Yeah.
Yeah, so definitely happy to talk, happy to be reached out. Message me on LinkedIn. There's my email ID as well in my profile. Just drop me an email. There's a Calendly link as well now these days. I'm trying to keep up with the tech, so they can book a meeting with me, and I'm happy to talk.
Cool. Thank you, Ulas. This was great. Thanks for coming on, man. Thank you.
Absolutely, it was a privilege, Ranak, and thank you so much for hosting me. I was always curious about the Curious Show, and I'll keep being curious as more and more people join in.
Cool. That's the podcast. Thanks.
All right,
Bye.
see you.
Hey, I'm stopping. What the fuck? Why did it? Has it stopped at your side?